injury to the victim, in this case, a juvenile. I'm not going to name the juvenile for obvious reasons, but the injuries that occurred to our juvenile was by kneeling on him on the back of his head and neck, forcing the victim's head into the pavement. The victim can be heard saying, "I can't breathe." Those, I realize, are now pretty infamous words, but in fact those were his words back in November of 2019 when this occurred. The victim's injuries included broken teeth and a gash on his forehead, and the incident occurred on November the 14th, 2019 in the parking lot of Go Chicken Go, and that is near the UMKC campus at 51st and Troost right here in Kansas City, Missouri. Now, there is an affidavit that's been signed by the grand jury foreperson and states that the jurors reviewed evidence in this case on multiple occasions. That started on or about June the 12th is when they began to hear testimony on this particular case. And this incident on November the 14th of last year began at about 10:40 p.m. when a Kansas City police officer became suspicious of the victim and another young male in this case who were entering the 7-Eleven near 89th and Warnell. They attempted to stop them, but the driver in that case drove away from the location. The driver in this case fled until the vehicle was stopped in the parking lot of the Go Chicken Go. The driver and the passenger is the juvenile victim in this case, and I will remind you at that time not even old enough to drive, so was not the driver. They both exited the car from their respective doors. Officers surrounded the car, and when they approached the car, both of these two occupants of the car, the driver and the juvenile passenger, were actually already out of the car on their knees with their hands above their heads. Now, Neil was one of the first officers on the scene. He took charge of my juvenile victim and taking him into custody. The victim did not struggle. He didn't pull away. He was handcuffed and he was lying on the ground on his stomach. He did not have a weapon. And Neil, along with another officer, began to roll the victim, who continued to remain compliant. And then Neil forced his knee on the back of the head of this young man. This was described by one witness as a knee strike. This forced his face into the cement and injured him. Neil's knee and body weight then remained on the back of the victim's head, and his face was pinned to the pavement, and that's when the victim can be heard saying, "I cannot breathe," in a plea for help. Now, once he's brought to his feet, the victim's injuries were clear, and he was taken then to Children's Mercy Hospital by KCPD police officers, where he received treatment. And I wanted you just to see a little bit of these injuries. This is to the teeth. His teeth were, obviously knocked out during the process of this, or chipped pretty significantly. And he also had a gash to his forehead. And there's that gash to his forehead, which required 8 stitches when he went over to Children's Mercy Hospital. So there are a couple of things about this case that I want to kind of lay out for you as well, in addition to those charges that I read for you, or that singular charge. One of the things that I'm disturbed about is that this incident occurred in November of 2019, but it wasn't until very late spring this year that we learned about it, we being prosecutors. A local attorney who represents this victim and his mother has been very instrumental in getting us to this point today and getting us to a charge. So I'm really grateful yet again for a local lawyer in our community that stepped up and wanted to share information with us, and I'm grateful for it. Now, needless to say, learning of this incident more quickly, or incidents like this more quickly, increases the chance that we'll find additional evidence. So it is important. Timing is important on these. So that kind of speaks for itself. Now, this use of force injuring this juvenile who was handcuffed, and compliant, I think we can all agree this is not a provocative statement that just can't be tolerated. That conduct can't be tolerated. It's not a provocative statement. We should all agree about that. And we have a system that we all have to trust that's going to alert us to these types of incidents. But I think obviously this system isn't quite working when it takes this long to get information to the right spot. And beyond that, I believe that there's even a presumption in the community that as the prosecutor, I know about all of these incidents, and that I view all of them, I see all of them, they come to me. And I'm here to tell you that I don't know all of them. It was the Kansas City Star that presented a video months ago that resulted in another charge. So what's important about this for you to know is that cases like this and other types of cases that can occur in this community, it doesn't just extend to my duty as a prosecutor to review those from a criminal perspective. Could there be criminal charges? Of course, that is one of my obligations as the prosecutor. But another obligation of prosecutor is to make sure that I am learning information that we call Brady-Giglio data that I can provide to defense lawyers in cases. I simply can't be blindsided by a lack of information. This is information I have to have it. And as my duty as a prosecutor, I need to have this information, even when it falls short of proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Maybe there isn't adequate evidence to go forward with a charge. Maybe it's not criminal, but perhaps it falls into that category of being Brady-Giglio material. What's important about Brady-Giglio is basically this. It's what impacts the credibility of a witness, and that includes police officer witnesses. And it's my duty to go out and seek that information so that I can turn it over to the defense in every case that I have. Beyond turning it over to the defense, I want to know it. I want to know it too. I want to know it because it helps me evaluate credibility of witnesses as well. So it's crucial and it's necessary. So I want to encourage the community, especially other victims, attorneys, to report incidents like this to my office. We want to know about them. We want to hear from you. And after protests occurred throughout Kansas City and other parts of the region this year, we created a website that gave people an opportunity to provide information to us about excessive force or police misconduct. Now, we have received numerous complaints from people who have actually clicked on that citizens' complaints part of the webpage, and I can't detail today, whether or not charges will come of that, but I can tell you that there are multiple incidents that are ongoing and under review. But it's also important for me to say that this website was not meant as a long-term solution. It was really meant as a temporary solution to the problem that we had regarding all the information that was coming out from information from protesters. So I think there's enough said about that, but I wanted that piece of information to be well conveyed, that I think however information comes to me, I want to be able to receive it and take it, but I think it's important for the community as a whole to know where do they go? Where should they bring this kind of material? Who's the keeper of it, and how that can happen going forward. Now, I also want to talk about our victim in this case. As I've said earlier, we are not going to name this young man. He is a juvenile, but I'm concerned that he will become the wrong kind of focus here. We know what that playbook looks like. We've seen it. So my concern is the playbook will be to make this victim appear to be a really bad person. someone who might actually deserve this kind of treatment. And I want to remind everyone that our victim was a 15-year-old passenger who was cooperative with police. His cooperation was met with excessive force. So I hope this community will rally around him. He has a mom. He has a mom who loves him, who worries about him like she does, like every parent here worries about their teenage kids. I also fall in that category of a mom that worries about a teenage son. And I guess what I'm asking the public is that we let's all try and ensure that his future is better, but not worse for this incident. And I think every citizen is owed that basic contract, that when we cooperate, things will end peacefully. All right, with that, I'm happy to take a few questions.
Can you discuss the evidence in the case? Is there any video? You seem to know what the juvenile was saying and exactly what happened.
There is some video. The video does not capture the entire incident. It captures a different part of the scene, but there is audio. And so the audio captures that notion about I can't breathe, the statement of the victim. So that's, and there were other witnesses that came forward that provided testimony in the case as well.
Was that audio provided by KCPD or was it their audio?
It is their audio, yes. Uh-huh.
So can you talk a little bit about the challenges that you face trying to seek charges in this type of case, the barriers that you face and how you have to overcome those barriers?
Well, there are several different pathways to look at cases. Mine happens to be the highest standard that we have, proof beyond a reasonable doubt, right? So that is the tallest hill to climb. And my job is to review facts and law as they come together, but we got to make sure, all the facts can come forward, and that as timely as we can receive information that happens, so that I have the best possible chance of putting a fair case together. That's true in any kind of case, not just these types of cases. So I just think there is a need for, I'm learning as well, that there's a need for a better reporting structure. And I'd like to find ways that we can improve that, and how we can gain more confidence of the community by giving them a process that they can also trust, and they know what to do, and they know how to use that system, and they can be assured that when information gets sent to this office, or that information will be sent to this office for review.
What about cooperation from KCPD? Talk a little bit about that, please.
Well, that's been tense, in recent months, as you well know. I'm really hopeful that we might, get to cross over that threshold at some point. My job is just my job, though. My job is, and by the way, I have about 22 police jurisdictions that I work with, not just KCPD. I have a, it's a big county. So problems should not be unique to a singular department, right? They just shouldn't be. And when they are, we should question, why is that? Why is that occurring? So I'm really hopeful that there can be some change going forward, and that people understand my job is to review evidence as it comes. That you don't get special. There's nothing special about a particular actor. That everybody has a chance to have evidence reviewed and looked at, and every victim is important. It doesn't mean I'll always get proof beyond a reasonable doubt and I can reach that highest standard, but the public should be assured that information is reported to the right places.
What about, you said there were 2 officers involved, right?
There are.
So and what's the deal with the other officer?
I think it's important to tell you that that this case remains under investigation, so we're going to keep looking at it. That's where I am in this moment in time, and if some point in the future I can change that, I'll be here to let you know that.
Are both the officers still employed with the Kansas City Police Department?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Are you concerned that police did not, that it took an attorney from the outside to bring this matter to your attention? Could you just discuss that, your concerns regarding that?
Well, I guess, I don't really care how information comes, right? It's not necessarily like I need to have a particularized process for information to come to me. So I want to encourage victims to come to us directly, and I want to encourage lawyers who represent them to bring information to us. And maybe there's other, flows of information that can come in. Like I said, the website is one way, to bring information through the door here. That was not meant as a long-term solution when I put it up there, though. It was really meant as we knew in those critical days we had to come up with something. There was a need, and so that's why the website had been launched. I don't think that's necessarily a long-term solution, though. I don't know that people necessarily feel comfortable enough to come to this kind of environment as well to provide information. So I want people to, in this community, to have a trusted place to go where they can deliver complaints.
This is the fourth Casey police officer that I guess the court has either indicted or charged. That seems to be quite unique in that. Could you give some perspective towards that? That just seems, this has never happened before in this county.
It probably has happened a bit more than you think.
Okay.
We have had last year three officers were charged with conduct within the performance of their duties. One of those was a vehicular fatality. One was a shooting in a different department, and there was actually a third one from another department. All I can say about that, about the timing of things, is that for me it is I don't control when information comes flowing in and how it comes flowing in. But I know that my job as a public servant is to encourage people to bring information to me, and I feel like that has been occurring maybe more regular than I've seen in the past.
I have a question for you regarding, I know you said you have the website still in place, but have you talked with the police chief, the police department, about how you would like them to present use of force to the prosecutor's office so that there's this direct policy on what you see and when you see it?
I think some of the holes that we have is, when an OCC complaint, an Office of Citizen Complaints, is substantiated, I don't get those. Now that did happen in this particular case, but as a general rule, those don't just flow to me, and something about that doesn't feel right. Right? Something about that seems like that's wrong. So there's got to be a way to fix that. But beyond substantiation, that's, there's a whole lot that falls underneath that I think is important for this office to know about as well. So I view cases differently than police view them, and that's not a statement about, is there tension between us. It's just the nature of the different sets of lenses that we use to review all cases. That doesn't mean that we don't usually come to the same conclusion generally about cases, but my review is just comes from a slightly different angle, and so I want to make sure that I'm getting enough information that is occurring in my community. I want to make sure I know about it so I can actually review it.
And then to follow up on what Dave had asked, just to clarify so I make sure I'm understanding correctly, so it sounds like there was dash cam video, but the dash camera may have been pointed away from the majority of what occurred between the teen and the officer, but recorded the officer's audio was the grand jury shown that audio video, and was there any other surveillance that may have reported some of what occurred as well?
So regarding other surveillance, we tried to go back and see what other surveillance we might be able to get, and I don't believe that there's other surveillance in that area. However, how many months later, it's really hard to go back many months to see if you can get surveillance. There is some dash cam in this. It doesn't capture the actual incident. So as you kind of described things, that's about right. There is some dash cam that captures part of the event, not the actual charged event, but there is audio and there's witness testimony.
What do you think body cameras? I know the police department had announced that they're working
Yeah.
on receiving those. What do you think those can do for cases like this and others unlike this?
I am a proponent of body cameras. You know, there's a lot of issues, and I know the police are really trying to work through some of those issues about how they onboard those, how they get them in. So I think those might be coming to Kansas City. When I've seen cities around the country, you know, bring in body cams for, you know, because of a particular push, because there was a critical incident that happened in the community and the community was very upset. They don't seem terribly long sustaining. So there's a variety of cities that did that and then they pulled them back. So I know those types of concerns have been conveyed to the police department, and I know that they are trying to work through all of the logistics of getting body cams and making sure that the policies are all set so that they're on when they should be on.
So you mentioned that you were concerned that this victim, this 15-year-old child, could potentially become, you know, the focus could potentially be put on him in the wrong way.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit more about that and why people should be looking at this as an officer accused of hurting a child.
You know, I've seen it. I've seen it not just here in my own jurisdiction on my own cases, but I've seen it in other jurisdictions. So it's just it is the playbook. It is simply how it is done. And I have had the benefit of prosecuting cases for a number of years. You know, the times where it really struck me the hardest about the attack on victims was when I worked in sex crimes and I tried a lot of sex crimes cases. And, you know, victims in those cases generally get attacked for whatever, you know, for a variety of conduct. So it is an old playbook. It's an old one. It's one that does get used. But in these types of cases, there appears to be a greater push to do a PR campaign to vilify the victim, and it's just been my observation.
But what about the child angle? It's a 15-year-old.
Yes, that's right. A cooperative 15-year-old. That's the point. It's not just the fact that it's a 15-year-old, but it was a cooperative 15-year-old young man, you know, who's in handcuffs, who's not fighting. So that changes, that sort of changes the dynamic for all of us and what we expect. So earlier when I said it is not a provocative statement that we expect better, and nobody in this city should disagree with me on that. That when someone is in handcuffs and they are cooperating, no one should disagree, no one should believe it's provocative, that we ask for better behavior.
Given that it sounds like you police would put out the information about this crime, can you tell us what the juvenile was being approached for suspicion of, and whether that suspicion was founded?
Yeah, I think that's in the documents that we released, so that you will have that. It was suspicion of a going into the 7-Eleven and that a robbery may be afoot. There was no arrest, however. There was, in fact, the 15-year-old. There were no charges issued and no arrest for anything at all.
How confident are you that you will get a conviction in this case? And if the officer is convicted, what kind of time would he face?
Well, this is a Class E felony, so it's a range from 2 to 4 years in this case. I'm not one of those prosecutors that, does a bit of the bravado about winning. My job is to carry cases, to carry them competently and fairly, and let a court of law, vet out what the appropriate justice is in that case. So it's different in every case. So it'd be much too soon for me to say what justice would be in this case.
Well, the reason I ask is because, some people, they're a little hesitant to come forward because they don't believe that they will get justice in their case, in any sort of excessive force case. So what can you say to those people?
I can say that this is a very competent office, that we, at the risk of not being popular, we will file cases that we believe merit a charge based on facts and law. And I will tell anyone who comes to me if I think that the evidence being the law or the evidence falls short of me making that burden of proof for them. But when I feel like we have it, I'll carry it. And, the consequences will be what they are.
I'd like to have a follow-up question on the policy we had addressed earlier. I believe in 2015 there may have been a memorandum of understanding with the FBI, the federal.
That's right, yeah.
And that I think in that memorandum of understanding that it was agreed upon with the prosecutor's office, KCPD, that if a citizen complaint or another complaint came forward, that it would be referred to the FBI. Is that not happening, or is that memorandum?
It does happen, and it did occur in this case. It just occurred really, really late. Really late. So there are several markers along the road, perhaps where that should have happened sooner, and it didn't. And I only know what I know. So I'm now trying to determine what all I don't know. So I'm a little bit measured, perhaps, in some of the comments that I make about that. I do think that MOU has value, and I'm grateful that the police department continues to believe it also has value too. The FBI were engaged in this case as well, and they have assisted us in this case. So I'm really grateful to them again for helping us, because they didn't have to, but they did. So it still exists, and we do use it, and I think the timeline of that maybe needs to get tightened up.
You mentioned that the cooperation with KCPD has been tense at times, but it's there, like there is cooperation there. Is there anything else that you could ask of them in the course of this to help this process go smoother?
Yeah, that's probably a longer discussion, and one that I'll have with them directly. There are some things that we do need to change, and even when we disagree, how we disagree is important. We don't have the choice of going to someone else. We are each other's partner, so that's not going to change. That's the way it is. And I've said numerous times, I will work with whoever, whoever's on the other side of the aisle, meaning in courtrooms. I will work with defense lawyers who want to get somebody completely off on a murder charge. We start at that kind of, polar opposites on cases, and we work together. So there's no one I can't work with, and and that remains true for me today at this podium.
Are you afraid that in this case that the police determined that the officer's actions were not of a criminal nature, that the officer was in their policy and procedures to do what he did in this particular case?
I don't know that I can answer all that today, Glenn. I think maybe that some of that is better for them to answer. I'm not sure yet. My job was to focus on, from a prosecutor's perspective, did I have the evidence and did I have law that I could put together here, and that was my focus in my review. And it was also a mom and a 15-year-old son that I wanted them to know they could expect better. Okay, I think that's all the time that we've got. And,
Copies of photos up here for everyone, the two that she displayed.
Do you have the dash cam?
I don't have it there.
no, we don't have that. Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Good pictures.
Yeah, it is.
All right, we'll see y'all.
All right, thank you.